Tonight, we're diving into the story of Byron Chubbuck, the man who robbed 6 banks in a single day and became one of America's fastest, boldest, and most unpredictable criminals. But before we begin, I want you to do just one thing. Turn off the lights in your room, sit back, and let your imagination take over. This video is made only for listening, so don't expect any big scenes on screen. Close your eyes and start imagining. Albuquerque, New Mexico, December 29, 1998. The year was almost over. It was a typical morning in the city's northeast heights. People were heading to work, just like any other day. Bank employees and customers were starting their day. Nobody had any idea what was about to happen. There was a man who had just robbed another bank a short time before. Now he was ready to make another withdrawal, but this one wasn't going to be from an ATM. This time, it was going to be straight from the bank counter, at gunpoint. The man entered the bank. There was no nervousness on his face. He walked straight to the counter, calm as if everything was normal, and told the teller, "Give me all the money in the cash drawer." Following bank protocol, the teller handed over the money without argument. In situations like that, avoiding confrontation is the safest way. Along with the money, she also slipped in a bundle with a dye pack inside, which would explode a moment later and spray color all over the cash. A dye pack is a small packet hidden in the bank's money. When a thief runs off with the cash, the packet explodes, staining the money. This makes the stolen cash useless and makes it easier for the police to catch the thief. The robber left without a sound, just as he had come. The moment he was gone, the bank immediately called the police. Because bank robbery is a federal crime, the FBI was also notified right away. FBI Special Agents Scott Campbell and John Thunberg immediately arrived to take over the case. For Agent Thunberg, this call seemed like just another routine case. At that time, Albuquerque was notorious for bank robberies. In the late 90s, there were about 90 to 100 bank robbery incidents here every year. But Thunberg didn't know this case was going to be completely different from all the others. When the people inside the bank were questioned, they all said the same thing. Everything seemed so normal that many people didn't even realize the bank had been robbed. No shots were fired, no one screamed. The teller didn't remember much about the men either. The description they got was very generic: a white or maybe Hispanic man, black hair, average build, sunglasses on his face, and a simple cap on his head. No special clothes, no identifying marks. The FBI's forensic team thoroughly checked the teller counter and the doors, but they found no usable fingerprints or any solid evidence. Now the FBI had only one hope left: the bank's surveillance cameras. They are the most important security tool in every bank. Sometimes the camera quality is good, and sometimes it's completely useless. In this case, the camera quality was extremely poor. The footage showed the man, but his face was impossible to identify. They got the recordings from both bank robberies, but there was no clear picture. There was no angle that clearly showed his face. Just the top of his hat was visible, but his face was completely hidden. This robber had hit 2 different banks in a single day and then disappeared. He left no fingerprints, no evidence. He had made the bank's surveillance system useless. The FBI had no way to identify him. The investigation made it clear that this man had not been involved in any previous bank robberies in Albuquerque. No prior record was found. The FBI suspected that he might be someone from out of town who had come to the city for a few days and, seeing an opportunity, had carried out the robbery. The agents began a thorough search of the area. They went to every house around the bank and conducted inquiries. Maybe someone saw him running away, or someone caught a glimpse of his car. And that's where the first major lead came from. A witness came forward. He was a neighbor living in the alley behind the bank. He said he saw a man running from the bank. The man turned into the alley and disappeared. Then he saw red smoke suddenly billow up. The FBI immediately understood it was the same dye pack that had gone out with the cash and had now exploded. The witness hadn't just seen the man, he also saw the car he escaped in, and most importantly, he had noted down the car's full license plate. The car was registered in the state of Nevada. This fact strengthened the FBI's suspicion. They were now convinced the robber was not from Albuquerque. The FBI ran that license plate through their system. The car's owner and his registered address came up. But that address wasn't a house, it was a motel near the Las Vegas Strip. It seemed like it had been done intentionally to mislead the police. The FBI felt they had hit another dead end. But they didn't give up. They cross-referenced the license plate with credit bureau records. That's where they got new information. The loan taken out on the car was linked to a different address. This time, it was in Wyoming. The FBI immediately sent an agent there. The agent met with the car's registered owner and asked him directly, "Where were you on December 29th, the day of the bank robbery?" The man was calm. He said, "I was right here in Wyoming, in an interview for a postal worker job." His supervisor who conducted the interview confirmed his statement. The man turned out to be straightforward. He had no criminal record and didn't even know his car was linked to a bank robbery in Albuquerque. Then he told them something important. He no longer had any rights to that car. The car was with his ex-wife, Carlita, who lived right there in Albuquerque. The FBI tracked down Carlita and questioned her. They asked where the car was on the day of the robbery. Did anyone else have a duplicate key? Carlita said she herself was at work on the day of the robbery. She said she had a large family and relatives often took the car. She didn't even know if the car was parked outside her apartment that day or not. But Carlita mentioned one small thing. When she got the car back, the gas tank was lower than before. Carlita gave the FBI permission to search the car. The FBI hoped they might find traces of the red dye inside the car because they remembered the dye pack had exploded on the cash from the bank. But after a complete inspection of the car, they found nothing. Now the question arose, did the witness read the license plate wrong? It was possible, but the FBI agent still had doubts about Carlita's story. Maybe she was telling the truth, but everything she said seemed like too much of a coincidence. A car registered in Nevada, seen on the same day as the getaway car in an Albuquerque bank robbery. This couldn't be ignored so easily. So far, no solid evidence linked Carlita to these robberies, but the FBI didn't rule her out as a suspect. She remained a person of interest. Slowly, all the leads in the investigation began to dry up. No new evidence was found, no new witnesses. The case was going cold. But a few months later, that mysterious robber surfaced again. This time, he was faster and more dangerous than before. From mid-March 1999 to the end of May, about 6 banks were robbed. His method was the same: go in, get the money, and leave without any fuss. And leave no evidence behind. With the witness statements, surveillance footage, and descriptions from bank employees they had, it was now clear that a serial bank robber was active in Albuquerque. For both the police and the FBI, this was no longer just a matter of theft. It was a warning bell because the robber was becoming more and more aggressive. According to Special Agent John Thunberg, he wasn't just asking for money anymore. He would jump over the counter and force the tellers to take money from different drawers. His behavior often turned violent. The agents feared that if this continued, someone could get hurt, or worse. Some witnesses even said it seemed like he was on drugs. He would shove people around for no reason and sometimes pull out his gun. One time, he told the bank employees that the money he was taking was to help hungry children in Mexico. After a robbery in June, the FBI got surveillance photos. These were the clearest pictures so far. They still had no solid physical evidence, but these photos were a big hope. The FBI decided it was time to get the public's help in this case. They gave information to the media. News stories started appearing in newspapers. His pictures were shown on TV, and people started calling Crime Stoppers with tips. This robber's pattern was clear. He only struck in northeast Albuquerque and often targeted the same area repeatedly. The FBI increased surveillance on the banks in that area. They hoped that if this man returned, he might fall into their trap this time. But the problem was they had no solid information. They were now relying on luck. Every single tip was followed up, but none led to any useful clues. Meanwhile, the robber's pace was increasing. Catching him was now the FBI's top priority. And it was frustrating when you put all your strength into it and still couldn't even find out the man's name. He disappeared every time as if he had never existed. No fingerprints, no evidence, just silence. The FBI needed the public's help. But the question was, how to get people's attention on this case? The FBI's bank robbery squad knew an old trick: give the robber a nickname. Such names often catch the media's eye, and then the general public also becomes aware of the case. This case got the name Robin the Hood because the robber claimed he was stealing money to give to hungry children. With each new robbery, the media ran with this story more and more vigorously, and surprisingly, the robber himself started to enjoy the name. Sometimes he even told the teller directly, "You know who I am. I'm Robin the Hood." But the FBI didn't believe it. The agents believed that, like other bank robbers, he was also blowing this money on drugs or his own squalid life. Whatever the truth, this robber was very clever. He never left any evidence. Now the agents had only one option left: to wait for where he would strike next. By now, he had robbed 14 banks, and the only link against him was Carlita's car. Special Agent Scott Campbell was still connected to Carlita. Over the past 8 months, he had spoken to her 5 or 6 times. Agent Campbell's suspicion was clear: either Carlita was somehow involved in all this, or she had a clue that would crack this case wide open. And then, in August 1999, this case suddenly took a turn. Carlita, who was 8 months pregnant at the time, called Agent Campbell herself. She said, "We need to talk. I have information that can solve this entire case." Carlita revealed that the real robber was her husband, Byron Chubbuck. She said she would tell them everything face to face. Campbell scheduled a meeting at her apartment the next morning. The FBI immediately pulled Byron Chubbuck's record. It turned out his past was quite dangerous. He was associated with Albuquerque's notorious Brewtown gang, and his temperament was violent. Carlita said she was speaking up now because Byron had moved to St. Louis. The agents offered her a safe place to give her interview, but Carlita refused. She said there was no danger anymore. She herself was with him when Byron packed his truck and left the city. Carlita was sure she was safe now, so she wanted the interview to be at her apartment. But the agents were cautious. Before entering the apartment, Agent Campbell called Carlita. He asked her, "Is Byron around? Any new information since last night?" When they were sure Byron wasn't there, they sent their dispatch the address and headed towards the apartment. As Agents Thunberg and Campbell went inside, they quickly scanned the entire room to make sure no one else was there. The moment Carlita saw the bank surveillance pictures, she immediately said, "That's Byron." She told them Byron was part of the Brewtown gang and that his behavior had become even more violent recently. Then Carlita said in a frightened voice, "I'm afraid for my life, and for my unborn child's." She pleaded with the agent, "Arrest him quickly. I need to get rid of him." Carlita said that Byron had threatened not only her but also her family. He had said that if anyone talked to the police, his gang would harm them. The FBI was now convinced the case was moving in the right direction. By now, Byron had robbed 14 banks in Albuquerque. The police and FBI were struggling to identify him. But after Carlita's testimony, they finally had a real lead. Carlita thought she was safe now because Byron was no longer in the city. But Carlita was wrong. In the middle of the interview, suddenly a car pulled up outside. Carlita looked out the window and said nervously, "He's here. This is him." The agents immediately understood that Byron had returned. They knew he could be dangerous, so they quickly hid in the bedroom. Campbell said, "We had already decided that if he showed up, we would arrest him, warrant or not." The agents kept their guns ready. Campbell said, "I couldn't see Byron, but I could clearly hear his voice." Carlita was also telling him they were inside. Campbell thought he might come inside now. He fired 2 shots towards the bedroom wall to make Byron stop. There was some gunfire for a while, and then silence fell. Campbell thought Byron was reloading. If he came in, the agents were ready. Just then, a shadow appeared at the door. Campbell was about to pull the trigger, but at the last moment, he realized it wasn't Byron, it was Carlita. He immediately stopped his hand. "Are you okay?" Campbell asked. Carlita nodded, scared. "Yes, I'm fine." The agents searched the entire house, but Byron wasn't there. He had escaped. Campbell said, "It was nothing short of a miracle. So many shots were fired, but neither we nor Carlita were injured. One bullet had passed extremely close to Carlita's head. Now the question was, where had Byron gone? The agents had no idea. They decided to stay there because the apartment was safer. The FBI immediately called the local police. Within minutes, uniformed officers from the Albuquerque Police Department arrived. The police, together with the FBI agents, quickly secured the entire area. They set up a perimeter all around, and the agents maintained constant contact with them. After that, the FBI agents took Carlita and left the apartment. Carlita, who was 8 months pregnant, was sent straight to the hospital for a medical checkup. Meanwhile, the police went door to door in the neighborhood, asking people if they had seen Byron Chubbuck running away. But no one had seen anything. The most surprising thing was that Byron's car was still parked outside. Lieutenant Terry Ward, in charge of the Albuquerque Police Department's Special Investigations Division, made it clear it was obvious this wasn't going to end peacefully. Byron's past criminal record, his violent clashes with police, and his recent encounter with an FBI agent all indicated that this could be his last stand. And then an officer spotted Byron in the window of another apartment in the same building. Byron was now just 2 doors down from Carlita's apartment. The entire building was surrounded. But Byron flatly refused to surrender. The police called their most experienced negotiator. They tried repeatedly to reason with Byron, to talk to him so he would surrender peacefully. But there was no response from inside. No one knew that Byron was slowly moving in the same direction where shots had been fired at the FBI agents just a little while before. The tension lasted for 3 hours, and then suddenly, Byron tried to run out of Carlita's apartment. The police immediately fired beanbag rounds. It's a non-lethal weapon that doesn't injure a person but knocks them unconscious. Amazingly, in this entire shootout and standoff, no one was seriously injured. Byron Chubbuck was arrested and taken straight to the FBI office. He pleaded guilty to charges of robbing 14 banks and assaulting federal agents. The court sentenced him to 40 years in prison, but the agents found very little money on him. The FBI never believed he had stolen that money to feed hungry children. One agent said, "When we got to know Byron well, it became clear this man wouldn't help any child. He just wanted to feed his drug habit." But the story didn't end there. Byron Chubbuck had been sentenced to 40 years, but he had no intention of serving that sentence. December 21, 2000. Byron pulled a new stunt in court. He said he wanted to remove his court-appointed lawyers and withdraw his guilty plea. This wasn't just a legal maneuver, it was the first step of his next plan because now he had to be brought back to court, and that's where Byron Chubbuck's most dangerous plan begins. U.S. Marshal Senior Inspector Eric Neighbor recounts, that day, after the court hearing, Byron was being taken back to the Santa Fe County Correctional Facility. But Byron Chubbuck had already prepared his next move. He had a key to unlock his handcuffs. How and when he got it, no one has been able to find out to this day. As the prison van got on the highway, Byron quietly unlocked his handcuffs and leg irons, and then suddenly, he kicked the van's window hard, shattering it. Before the guards could understand what was happening, Byron had half his body out the window. The van driver heard a loud noise. He thought they had collided with another vehicle, but when he looked in the rearview mirror, the scene was different. Byron was hanging out the window, about to escape. The guards tried to stop him, but he was too fast, and with the other prisoners left behind, chasing him was impossible. On December 21, 2000, Byron Chubbuck had now turned from a convicted criminal into a fugitive. Correctional officers even fired at him, but Senior Inspector Neighbor says, "We don't think he was hit by any of the bullets." Now the Albuquerque police launched a massive manhunt. Hundreds of police officers, search dogs, helicopters, house-to-house searches. Every corner was scoured. A helicopter was flying in an aerial grid pattern so no area was missed. By now, everyone knew Byron Chubbuck was an extremely dangerous man. The FBI guessed that a man this desperate could do anything. It was crucial to catch him quickly, otherwise, an innocent person could be in danger because of him. But hours passed, and no trace of Byron was found. The agencies now had to expand the search area. 6 different agencies worked together to lock down the area. Roadblocks were set up. Every street, every house was searched, but all the effort was in vain. Byron was nowhere to be found. And then a woman called the police. She reported a carjacking. The woman said a man who looked exactly like Byron had taken her in her car to the outskirts of the city. But the surprising thing was, he let her go without harming her. The woman told the investigators what Byron was wearing, what time and where he left her, everything. Now the entire focus was shifted to that area. But by the time the police got there, Byron had disappeared again. By 9 p.m., the manhunt was officially called off. By now, so much time had passed that it was clear, Byron could have been hundreds of miles away. That night, when no leads were found, the FBI changed its strategy. This was no longer just a manhunt, it had become a major criminal investigation. Investigators began questioning Byron's family members, his gang associates, and old contacts. Everyone was sure Byron couldn't be hiding alone somewhere. He must have been getting help from someone, but the agents only found denial and silence everywhere. "I told you, I don't know anything," one gang member said while sitting in a police car. The Brewtown gang, which Byron was associated with, was not going to give up their men under any circumstances. Given Byron's violent and uncontrollable nature, the U.S. Marshals Service placed him on their top 15 most wanted list. An inspector said, Byron was now so motivated to never be caught again. He could do anything to save his own life, or to take someone else's. Now the FBI started monitoring every hangout spot of his gang. Every place his associates frequented was observed. They talked to people on the street. Every little movement was watched. Along with this, the FBI also started monitoring bank robbery cases across the country. Maybe Byron would strike again. But surprisingly, a whole week passed with no activity. Byron seemed to have vanished. But one thing everyone knew, Byron was addicted to drugs. He used methamphetamine, a drug that makes a person dangerous, aggressive, and recklessly careless to the point of insanity. And to feed this habit, he needed cash again. The FBI was sure Byron would rob banks again, and that would be their chance to catch him. Byron had now become the FBI's top priority. Catching him was essential, at any cost. Although some investigators believed Byron was no longer in the U.S., Lieutenant Terry Ward of the Albuquerque Police Department says he had connections in Mexico. He could have easily fled there. "I don't think he was hiding in Albuquerque because by now his face and name were known to everyone." But then, suddenly, on January 16, 2001, a full 1 year and 5 months after his last robbery, Byron Chubbuck returned. And this time, he went straight to his old area and robbed 6 banks in Albuquerque in a single day. Just a week later, he returned again. He robbed 3 banks in 2 days. Every time he approached a teller, his style was the same. "Hurry up, put the money in the bag." Special Agent John Thunberg, who had been on this case from the beginning, says Byron was a very reckless type of robber. He would rob the same banks he had hit before. He didn't care that the people there might recognize him. Every time he would say, "I'm Robin the Hood." And every time, the police and FBI came up empty-handed. No fingerprints, no clear CCTV footage, no evidence. As the robberies increased, Byron became more and more fearless. He now began to mock the police and the agencies. The FBI wasn't finding any solid evidence after each robbery, and these incidents were now happening continuously. Byron was no longer just a robber, he had become a name in Albuquerque. The entire city was looking for him. Every night, his pictures were shown on local news channels, Crime Stoppers numbers, posters, and reward announcements. Byron was everywhere. The FBI received hundreds of calls. Maybe it's him. Maybe I saw him. But every lead turned out to be useless. The FBI suspected that Byron was getting help from his Brewtown gang. This was no ordinary gang. They were extremely dangerous and loyal people. They had a network that could hide Byron and, if needed, even confront the police. Now the Albuquerque police and FBI were combing the entire city. Byron, who was a violent bank robber and had escaped from jail, was out of control again. Now multiple agencies were after him together. U.S. Marshal Senior Inspector Eric Neighbor says, the Albuquerque Police, the FBI, and the U.S. Marshals Service, all three joined forces to create a task force so we could combine our strengths to catch Byron. This was no longer just a case, it had become a battle for three agencies. But despite such a large operation, Byron kept robbing banks and getting away every time. Investigators wiretapped the phones of several of Byron's contacts. Some calls suggested that maybe Byron had fled to Mexico. The FBI alerted Border Patrol and Mexican Federal Police. But then some other calls were intercepted, which revealed that he might be back in Albuquerque. The location wasn't clear, there were only hints. Despite this, the police and FBI kept pressure on the Brewtown gang. Everyone was made to understand clearly, until Byron was caught, no one would have any peace. And this pressure finally worked. On the morning of February 5, 2001, an envelope arrived at a local radio station. That letter was from Byron Chubbuck himself. DJ TJ Trout of Albuquerque's 94 Rock Morning Show says, when we opened that letter, we were stunned. To be honest, we were shocked. It was really Byron's letter. In that letter, Byron set some conditions for his surrender. He wanted a chance to be interviewed on 94 Rock. He wanted to level accusations against some police officers. He claimed they had wronged him and tried to kill his pregnant wife. Byron wanted all this to reach the public. If that happened, he would surrender peacefully. DJ Trout says, we didn't know if it was a real letter or a prank. I went on air and read that letter and said, if you're really him, call this number. A few seconds later, the phone rang. Trout picks up the receiver. Hello, can you hear me? Byron's voice comes through. Yes, I can hear you. Trout asked, are you trying to set me up? Byron said, no, I'm not doing anything like that. Byron's voice was panicked. He kept saying, there's a helicopter above. They're watching me. These feds, marshals, police, they're all liars. These people shot up my house when my wife was pregnant. The end of the call was shocking. Trout asked, can we contact you again? Byron replied, no. Listen, man, I have machine guns. I'm ready for anything. Whatever happens, we'll see. It was now clear, Byron was ready for a fight. The radio station immediately reported this call to the FBI. One agent said, I think Byron was doing all this for the publicity. He liked being in the public eye. When a criminal comes forward and tries to stay in the media, it's good for us because then we have clues we can use to catch him. The most difficult criminals are those who completely disappear. And this time, Byron's very habit became his trouble. The forensic team found his fingerprints on the letter he had sent to the radio station. It was now confirmed, the letter was real, and Byron had sent it. After this, the investigation team looked at the CCTV footage from the radio station. It was clear at first glance, the man who brought the letter was not Byron. Everyone knew Byron's face, and what was showing on the camera was someone else. The picture was clear, and this became the big clue. A police detective recognized that man. His name was Ronald Baker, who was sometimes seen with the Brewtown gang. The police now decided to put Ronald under surveillance without his knowledge. He would himself show the way to Byron. The Albuquerque gang squad began watching Ronald Baker's mobile home. The surveillance continued for several days. Then one night, a man came out who looked like Byron. But because it was dark, a positive identification wasn't possible. Now the biggest question was, how to get inside the trailer. At the same time, the agencies got another big piece of news. Another of Byron's associates was arrested on carjacking charges. The FBI knew that if this man became an informant, he could lead them straight to Byron. Special Agent John Thunberg says, we thought we'd hit him with federal charges. Those are very strict. If he didn't cooperate, he'd face years in prison without parole. At first, he wasn't willing. He was afraid that if the gang found out he helped the police, his life could be in danger. But in the federal system, there's no parole. Meaning if he refused, it was straight to jail for a long time. Finally, he was given two options, either face federal charges or help out and in return get state-level charges where there might be a chance for parole. The fear of jail finally broke him, and he became an informant. The plan was clear, send the informant into that trailer to confirm whether Byron Chubbuck was hiding there or not. He was told to make an excuse, like asking for water, and to take a little time, so it seemed natural. But this mission was dangerous. If the gang members inside had even the slightest suspicion he was working for the police, he could be killed. The recorder was on. As soon as the informant went inside, the FBI agent started listening through the wire. The atmosphere inside was very tense. The informant started making casual conversation to lighten the mood. Then he quietly asked, "Where's Chubbs?" The answer from inside came, "There's no one in the back." But the informant sensed something else. Faint voices, some movement, like someone was hiding. As the tension rose, the informant got the signal that it was time to get out. He came out of the trailer. His debriefing began at the police station. "Did you hear anything in the back room?" an officer asked. "Yes, there was something there," the informant replied. Now the investigators were fully convinced Byron Chubbuck was inside the trailer, but they couldn't launch the operation until they had definitive proof. So they decided to send the informant back in. "Change your clothes, you'll have to go back in," the officer said. The informant was nervous. "I don't know if this is right or not." But finally, he agreed. This time, the undercover officers were fully prepared. If anything went wrong, they would immediately storm in. The informant went into the trailer again. After a little while, he said, "Man, I'm really tired. Need a place to crash?" The answer came from inside. "Yeah, man. Crash on the sofa." The informant said, "All right, I'll be right back. Let me tell my friends," and he walked out. Senior Inspector Eric Neighbor says, "The moment he came out, he confirmed it for us. Byron Chubbuck is in that trailer." Lieutenant Terry Ward says, "Most career criminals are paranoid. They trust very few people. They're always looking over their shoulder. They never stay in one place for too long. Always stay hidden, keep a low profile. And when drugs are involved, this fear increases even more." In the meantime, the Albuquerque PD's specially trained tactical arrest team gets the call. They hoped this operation would end peacefully, but they were prepared for any situation. The Albuquerque Gang Unit and Repeat Offenders Program teams quietly moved towards the trailer in stealth mode, but the people inside were not willing to comply with police orders. Now the investigators had to make an immediate decision. Byron Chubbuck was a dangerous fugitive, and it was essential to stop him at any cost. Detective Richard Lewis rushed to the scene at full speed. Just a few seconds later, he saw a car and identified that Byron Chubbuck himself was inside. "This was the one," Lewis says, "the one we had been looking for all these days." At that moment, Lewis decided he had to stop the car right there. He deliberately rammed his car into Byron's car. An intentional crash. The other officers immediately arrived on the scene, and they saw Byron Chubbuck lying on the ground, completely still. Next to him was a TEC-9 semi-automatic handgun. Byron had been shot in the chest, but he was alive. Ronald Baker was also arrested. Some shots were also fired around the trailer where people were sleeping, but miraculously, everyone was safe. And thus, months of hard work, public tension, and fear reached a decisive end. Special Agent Scott Campbell says, "This was the outcome this mission was meant to have. The good guys stayed safe, the bad guy was caught, and everything ended right where it should have." In the end, all of Byron Chubbuck's claims proved false. He was no Robin Hood, as he portrayed himself. In reality, he was a violent criminal, as his entire record shows. Byron Chubbuck was found guilty on multiple counts, escaping from jail, bank robbery, assault with a weapon. His whole life revolved around crime. A federal judge added another 40 years to his previous 40-year sentence, meaning Byron Chubbuck now received a total of 80 years in prison. The bullet that took him down became the end of his crime spree. Byron recovered completely from that wound, but now his world was confined to the four walls of a prison. Special Agent Scott Campbell recounts, "During this entire investigation, I read some of Byron's personal letters. He was a very intelligent man. He could have lived a peaceful and successful life if he wanted to, but for some reason, he chose the path of bank robbery, and for a while, he was very good at it too. But his greed and his ego proved to be his biggest enemies." Byron Chubbuck was a dangerous man. Someone who would shoot without thinking, who wouldn't hesitate to take the lives of federal agents. But because the FBI and law enforcement never backed down, today that man is a danger to no one. Now his life is just imprisoned behind iron bars.
And that was today's story. I hope you enjoyed listening to it. Maybe you've already fallen asleep while hearing my voice. I think you're in your dream now. Good night, and sweet dreams.